Welcome to another episode of FCS Delivered. Happy holidays. I'm Craig Haley along with co-host Gary Reasons. Gary, I know you and Santa Giant are quite busy these days. How you doing?
We're doing great, Craig. It's a lot of fun, and things are winding down. We got our top four seeds now already advanced to the next level of the playoffs with the FCS championship bracket, and we're going to break it all down. It's going to be fun, and this season has kind of gone to what people have expected, don't you think?
Certainly. I mean, the cream of the crop rose, and just like we thought about it in the preseason, and even Jackson State winning the Celebration Bowl, they've kind of been the best team all along. But let's get right to it. I mean, you mentioned, the 8 seeds made it to the quarterfinals. The top 4 seeds have advanced to the semifinals. I know you were impressed with the selection committee, seeding a week ago. Any other takeaway as we move into the semifinals?
Well, I think that what you're really seeing now at the very, very top of this bracket, and what has really transpired is that these really are elite teams, and they're built for championship level football. And the championship level football is physical, it's dominant, it is really an understanding of how to get to the next level. And these 4 teams, they all have a lot of that in common, and that's something that you should be proud of if you were one of these programs, because it is a culture of football that you have undertaken, and it really just kind of molds you into the team that you are. And these 4 teams, they are elite teams across the FCS.
Well, we're familiar with the Dakota schools and the Montana schools. I mean, Montana State, the top seed. I mean, they won 52-19 over Idaho in the quarterfinals. It was 10-10 in the second quarter, and then Montana State, rolled off 42 straight points. What did you think of this kind of win over Idaho?
Well, they just flex their muscle, Craig. You take a team like Montana State, and they've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of class in them, and they understand how to win big games. And they knew they were going to get a good shot from Jason Eck's team at Idaho, and they felt like they had to go in there, and they just did exactly what they needed to. They took care of business, and they did it in a very demonstrative way. And Tommy Mellott, he's a guy that we've talked about with Montana State. He had a tremendous game, over 305 yards in total offense, combined in that football game. He's their leader, and he's the stick that drinks. He's the stick that stirs their drink, definitely for Montana State.
Yeah, I mean, even with Scott Tree Humphrey out, their leading rusher, I mean, Adam Jones stepped up alongside Tommy Mellott. They just kind of rolled. Jason Eck, you mentioned, he's now left Idaho to become New Mexico's coach. Just a tremendous job he's done with the Vandals. All right, Montana State's going to play South Dakota, the number 4 seed. Bob Nielsen's crew is just, getting hot at the right time. They had 6 turnovers in this win over UC Davis. I think one of the keys, Lan Larison getting hurt, left the game in the second quarter, the all-purpose leader in the FCS for UC Davis, 35-21. I mean, the Coyotes have really kind of been terrific all year, and maybe even not getting the notice they should because of Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. You have to be impressed with the Coyotes.
Well, the resiliency of South Dakota is just how they're winning football games. You talked about the turnovers in that game. Really, they were done by both teams. It was basically a turnover fest. But when it came down to it, South Dakota made the plays that they needed to win, and also to turn away the UC Davis team. So that's essentially what went on there. Coach Nielsen has done a wonderful job. Aiden Bowman as their quarterback is really, he's turned into, I think, Craig, a pretty elite quarterback. I went up there last year for On Campus and had a chance to meet him, and he was a young quarterback getting into it. He has now blossomed into a guy that you have to deal with, and congratulations for them to getting into the top 4. And it was a heck of an effort, and they really showed they could flex their muscle as well.
I'll give you a team that doesn't turn the ball over. North Dakota State. They're the number 2 seed. They only have 4 turnovers the entire year in the 12-2 season. What a run they've had under Tim Polasek, their first-year head coach. They beat Mercer 31-7, another win inside the Fargo Dome in the playoffs. I mean, here they are, getting ready to play their rival, South Dakota State, but they really showed a lot in this win over Mercer, Gary.
They did, and it's just like football of old. You think for North Dakota State, you have the Bison rolling out there and just being physical, being dominant. That's what happens at the line of scrimmage. With North Dakota State, they take over the football game, and they really have the team that they're playing. Their will is not enough to overcome, the Bison. They're just too powerful, and so that is what's happened. These four teams we've talked about, they all have a lot in common: is that they can take care of business at the line of scrimmage, and that's really where you win championship football. North Dakota State in that ball game over Mercer, they really flexed their muscle, and they showed they're an elite team.
Well, another team that flexed muscle, South Dakota State, and every time I see they're the number 3 seed, it brings pause because you almost say, is that right? I mean, the 2-time defending national champions, 55-14 over UIW, who has been so impressive this year out of the Southland. But Jimmy Rogers' crew is maybe playing the best in the playoffs going into their matchup against North Dakota State. But what did you think of this win over UIW, decisive that is?
You talked about Coach Rogers, and second year as a head coach there, and really I think he's really comfortable in what they're accomplishing and what they're doing. Obviously, got a great leader in Mark Gronowski at the quarterback position, and being able to do things offensively, run the football, throw the football as they need to be. And they took on a very good UIW team. But here's what you'll see, and that is, and really it's kind of across the country, the differing levels of how these teams are built. You could tell in this ball game, watching South Dakota State, that they're built differently at the line of scrimmage than UIW is, because UIW is, and I will call them more of an explosive offensive team. And really, South Dakota State had a tremendous defensive effort, only allowing 14 points to a really explosive offense. And then you have the offense that South Dakota State has, and then it just kind of puts it all together. So that's why you get these numbers, 55-14 in that effort. And Coach Rogers really, I think, has been comfortable all season long. He has brought his team along one more time for this ride, and it could be special.
Yeah, Gary, everybody's jazzed up about these semifinal matchups: 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. How about the difference here? I mean, South Dakota State and North Dakota State play each other all the time. They know each other so well. In the approach in that game versus South Dakota and Montana State, who haven't played since 2009, only the third time they're meeting, what is the difference in that game prep? 2 teams that know each other, 2 teams that aren't really as familiar.
Well, as a coach, you're not going to have to really inspire or talk to your players a lot about what you need to accomplish. And I think there's going to be some key things, Craig, that go into both of these semifinal matchups here this coming weekend. But I think that it's all going to be around the line of scrimmage play. And really the 2 teams that are most familiar with each other, you talked about them, South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Well, they know it's going to be a powerful football game. It's going to be the most physical game in the FCS all season long. You can count on that it's going to be one of the most physical football games that you will watch all season long. And so when you look at that, you have to take into account, what are the variables? And the variables in the game are really the things that really are going to make it a win or a loss. And the variables really come around with possessions and turnovers, okay? Who can maximize possessions and who can eliminate or allowing turnovers and also be able to force turnovers. So that's what's really going to come down to a game like this. And it's one that's going to be won with razor thin margins, I think, for either side. So it's going to be a tight, close ball game and the game of the week.
Well, Gary, we mentioned the Dakota schools, the Montana schools. I mean, that's all we ever seem to see this late in the season. I mean, it's good for college football, in my opinion, to have, dominant teams that draws attention, but they're sort of pulling away even more from the FCS. How can that change for the rest of the FCS?
I think it comes down to skill groups, okay? The skill groups that are really elite at Montana State, North Dakota State, those programs have built their offensive and defensive lines on a philosophy of toughness, and really they put players in those positions that really can excel within the scope of the defenses and offenses that they have there, and it's all power. And you understand that everything starts there. I see football at all of the other conferences across the country at the FCS level as, if there's one shining bright spot that is not as bright as it is perhaps in the MVFC and also the Big Sky, It's the play of the big guys. The big guys really set the table for how your football team is going to be able to go. And that's the thing that I think that the FCS really across the nation, outside of those two big conferences I mentioned, I think that is really telling, because that's where your games are going to be won and lost, at the line of scrimmage. And it's evident again this season, Craig.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Gary, for sure. Let me ask you this. I mean, we're headed towards a national championship game. We have one national champion already, the HBCU national champion. Celebration Bowl, Jackson State beat South Carolina State 28-7. What did you think of the Tigers' effort under T.C. Taylor, who's an alum of Jackson State?
Well, I went out there this season and talked to Coach Taylor and celebrated with his team an early win. But, you take a look at the body of work that they had across the season, and they really got better, Craig, every single week. And that's the mark of a good football team. And Coach Taylor, I think he understands what it takes to be a winner. I think he understands how to bring these young men around and get better and improve every single week. And if you're a football team, you're trying to do that. Those 4 teams we just mentioned, talked about, all of them have gotten better every single week. And I think that Jackson State is no different. They really took care of business. The SC, South Carolina State University quarterback, Eric Phoenix, who is the HBCU Plus Player of the Year, didn't have his best effort. And it showed in that ball game. And so Jackson State should be commended, because they had one heck of a run this season. Congratulations to Jackson State.
They really were the best team this year in HBCU football. And the SWAC has really come on strong between the Celebration Bowl and the MEAC SWAC Challenge after the MEAC was dominating for years. So, Gary, we're going to take a break here from FCS Delivered. And when we come back, we're going to talk more FCS football in segment number 2.
Bring rings to beach wedding.
FedEx presents Tall Tales of True Deliveries.
Just another day on the job.
We did this for love. See what we can do for your business. FedEx.
Welcome back to FCS Delivered. Craig Haley along with Gary Reasons. Gary, we've seen a lot on the field happening, but there was some big news off the field last week. Obviously, Nashville has obtained to be the championship host of the FCS championship game to conclude the 2025 and 2026 seasons. Obviously, it takes place in January. First Bank Stadium on the campus of Vanderbilt University is going to host. This has all happened because Toyota Stadium in Frisco, which is about to host the championship game for the 15th time, will be undergoing renovation in their stadium. It's going to be about a 3-year project. So it's been moved to Nashville. What do you think of this move to a new city?
Well, for Frisco, it's a great event. It's good. I live in this area. I live in McKinney, adjacent to Frisco, Texas. So it's a great time to come and be here. And I think the FCS community across the country, it's an easy place to get to, and people love coming here. And albeit now we have the stadium renovations, and that's something that has to be dealt with. So they're going to take a little brief pause, I think, and go out to Nashville for this. And hopefully they'll bring the game back here following that, because it's been a great venue for FCS football throughout the season. So, but I think when you go to Nashville, I've been through there a few times over the last couple of seasons, staying the night and so forth to go see some of these on-campus visits. I can tell you this, and especially because of my video assistant, who's actually my son. He's our dinner coordinator, and he knows how to find the best restaurants in Nashville, and there's plenty of them. So it'll be a great fun spot for the FCS community to come out to Nashville and enjoy a little time there.
I think the OVC and the Nashville Sports Council, I know they do terrific job. So I think that helps in this transition. The Southland Conference and Frisco have been wonderful hosts through the years. Obviously, January 6th, they'll be hosting the championship game again. So if Nashville got its FCS holiday wish by being named to host in the next 2 seasons, what is Gary Reason's holiday wish for the FCS level?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me tell you, Craig. Here's something that I wish that the NCAA would do differently about the FCS. Well, a couple of things, actually. One is, I think that I would wish that the NCAA would raise the scholarship limit to completely equal it to the FBS schools. which is 85 instead of 63. So let's bring them all up to parity, 85 to 85. There's enough out there. Don't worry about that. Just make it economically feasible. And then also, I would hope that the NCAA would spend some of that money that they're making on the backs of all these big FBS programs back at the FCS level to make it a more elite and on par with FBS content coverage, and so that it gets that prominence that it really doesn't have. And here's what I would start with. I would start with creating an oversight committee and a group of people who have interest in the FCS as well as have experience in delivering this content of FBS excellent coverage. And hey, guess what? They're going to come out of that work and they're going to bring some ideas and concepts to the NCAA for consideration and the conferences that can really heighten it. I think at some point, Craig, the FCS level football is going to be just as good as the FBS football. It's going to take a little while, but I think it's going to get there because there's plenty of players across the country that can excel, and there's going to be a lot of teams that can really rise to the top. So I see the river rising, so to speak, at the FCS brand of football to be on par with FBS in the coming years.
That's fascinating stuff. I tell you, if I had to wish for one thing this holiday season for the FCS, as you kind of allude, the growth of the FCS, I would like to see more divisions like the SWAC does across the conferences. There are, 5 conferences that are over 10 teams right now, and there were a few others that were in double figures before. I just think having this big clump of standings is not attractive when the 9th place team is playing the 11th place team late in the season. I'd like to see divisional play, and you play everybody within your division and maybe a few crossover games, because these schedules aren't built the same. Sometimes your schedule is against the stronger teams. Sometimes it's against the weaker teams. It makes a difference. So I do think these conferences really need to consider divisions, even if they don't have a championship game. And I think having a championship game like the SWAC is wonderful. And they did it in the COVID season, spring 2021, and the Patriot League had a championship game. The NEC had a championship game. I think they can make it work. Schedule-wise, yes, they have to figure it out. But I just think divisional play would be attractive, and maybe a conference championship game leading to the playoffs. But there's so much we could talk about for a holiday wish for the FCS, because it's just a wonderful time. We mentioned Frisco. We're coming up to the championship game. We're also coming up to the FCS National Awards banquet. Gary, you'll be the host, of course. As we go to break, let's spotlight in this video the players and the coach who are being invited to the national banquet. This is FCS Delivered. Welcome back to FCS Delivered, our third segment, Gary and I. Gary, we are here. We've arrived to the Final Four of the FCS playoffs. Just 2 power matchups, as we've been talking about. Let's kind of break them down. We'll go to the second one first. It's number 4 South Dakota's 11-2 at number 1 seed Montana State 14-0. 3:30 p.m. Saturday on ABC. Montana State is just rolling at home. 34 out of the last 35 home games. South Dakota has really stood up great this year. What do you notice in this game?
Well, this is a game that sets up well for Montana State, I think, for a number of reasons. One, they're on a roll. I think for the most part, they're healthy in this football game. That is really key here late in the season. And I think that they've just got the momentum, and they're pretty much the darling team. I think that the Coach Vigen and how he has built this team to understand that, one, you got to win at the line of scrimmage, you got to take care of the football, you maximize possessions, and then your players make plays. And they've had a couple of guys step up, and they've been able to do that. You take a couple of rushers, with Humphrey and Jones, both over 1,000 yards rushing the football for Montana State. That's impressive. And then you add Tommy Mellott to the mix, who can run it just as well or throw the football. So I think their offense is really built to really succeed late in the season, where you can take the will of a team out of it. Now, it's going to be tough against South Dakota, because this team, I tell you, Coach Nielsen has put together a very viable squad, and it is something that they really have shown really well in the playoffs. I picked against South Dakota the last couple of weeks to my peril, because they have overcome everything they needed to win those games. They're going to put up a fight here against Montana State. How do you see it, Craig?
I think, South Dakota has really kind of been under the radar, but they've played all the top teams. They took South Dakota State to overtime. They beat North Dakota State. They beat UC Davis. Those are three of the top 5 teams here in the playoffs. And now they're taking on Montana State. So I just think they're ready for this. They do practice outdoors, even though this is their first outdoor game in almost 2 months. So I think practicing outdoor kind of, takes a little concern off there. But Aiden Bowman is going to be key to me. He's got to have a big game. He's a lefty. I think, you don't see a lot of lefties when you're playing on defense. So that's a factor here for Montana State's defense. I'm going to go with the Bobcats at home. Who are you picking?
Well, I think it is a home winner too. I think that the Bobcats, Montana State, I think that they really have just got something going on that's special this season. I think they're going to continue to get a chance to get down to Frisco. So it'll be a tough ball game, and they're going to have to. Both teams are going to have to maximize possessions. But I got the Bobcats.
Well, there's a reason we saved the other game, even though it's the first one being played on Saturday. We saved it for number 2 here, because number 3 seed South Dakota State at number 2 North Dakota State. They're both 12-2. It is noon Eastern on Saturday on the ABC. I mean, there's nothing else you could say about this rivalry that hasn't been said, because it is the rivalry in FCS right now. The last 2 national champions are South Dakota State. Prior to that, North Dakota State had won 9 of the 11 FCS championships since 2011. I tell you, South Dakota State, as I mentioned, I think they've been the most impressive in the playoffs. They're on a 10-game playoff winning streak, all by double digits. But North Dakota State won that regular season matchup 13-9. Break this game down for us.
Well, South Dakota State, first of all, you got head coach Jimmy Rogers, second year there, and I think that he's done a nice job of just building this team to win late in the season, really all season long. They're right back at the table where they want to be. They're going to have to go on the road and win this game, though, because North Dakota State is the home environment. For years, Craig, we've talked about how you play in the Fargo Dome. The Fargo Dome is very, very difficult for opponents to come in there and win, and it's been evident over the years. And that's the thing that's going against South Dakota State in this one. I think that Mark Gronowski is kind of the wild card here. If he has a good game throwing the football and also just orchestrating their offense, I think it's going to give them a chance to win. But Cam Miller has had a tremendous season as well himself for North Dakota State. I think that the 2 quarterbacks here are really going to set the table. I know the offensive lines and defensive lines are going to be stellar performers. It's going to be a tight ball game, Craig. And I actually think that I'm going to have to go with South Dakota State in this one to pull an upset over North Dakota State in the Fargo Dome.
Well, these are the elite powers in the last decade. I think South Dakota State has an advantage in speed. I think that makes a difference. I think they probably have the better defense. I tell you, though, the defense of the Bison in that regular season matchup was phenomenal. They really took away the pass. They're going to have to do it again here. I'm going to go with North Dakota State, only because they were my preseason pick. They were my pre-playoff pick. But I do think the Jackrabbits have been the best team in the playoffs. Jimmy Rogers is just on another level coaching this team. But I'm going to stick with the Bison. Maybe a 1-point win, but it could go either way. Just a phenomenal matchup that we're all looking forward to. Both games are terrific. South Dakota at Montana State in the 3:30 p.m. game on Saturday. So, Gary, I mean, this is it. This is the weekend we've all been looking forward to. I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, we got two teams. It's going to come down to one team. And, that's what it's all about. You get a chance to play in a national championship game. That is special. That is very much a huge memory, a big moment for both of these all four of these programs. Who's going to get there? That's what it comes down to, and that's what's really special about the FCS cred. We've talked about it before. The bracket play that the FCS has done for years and years and years is really where football needs to be answered, and it's on the field. So you've got to win to get there, to earn your right to be a potential national champion. And this is a weekend that we know who's going to be the two contestants for that final showdown.
Well, Gary, this is the 21st episode this season of FCS Delivered, so there's a little bit of a grind. But another holiday wish. We're going to take a week off. Can you believe it? We're going to take a week off. So we're going to come back with our next episode Monday, December 30th. You can find it here on TheAnalyst. But tell you, we wish everybody happy holidays. I wish you, Gary, safe and healthy happy holidays. And we will be back again December 30th. And thank you for tuning in this week of FCS Delivered.